You're listening to Talking Law, the podcast where business owners just like you discover how to avoid legal landmines and build value using smart legal tips.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here and welcome back to Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, in today's conversation, you're going to hear from Dave Jennings, author of the book Systemology and the Ultimate Systems Guru. In this episode, we explore the intersection of legal and systems, the role that well-designed systems and processes play in achieving growth and enabling scalability that's going to create solid foundations for stable growth and one that ultimately creates a saleable business. So without further ado, let's dive into our discussion with Dave. Dave, can I just say a huge thank you for coming on to our show today?
My pleasure. I love talking about systems, so it's just as much of a pleasure for me.
Oh, do you know what? I love talking about systems as well, and that's why I feel like you and I could talk for 100 years about all of these topics. But I come from the fundamental, I've always had a fundamental belief in systems. I've read, I guess as most business owners have, the E-Myth many years ago. And when I read it, I was just like, oh my God, this is the path forward. And one of the things that I feel so fundamentally is lawyers as a whole view documents, right? Someone says, I needed terms and conditions in my business, whatever. I'll go to my lawyer and get the terms and conditions. And what they get delivered is this document, right? But what they don't get is the concept that a document in and of itself is not going to stop a dispute. It's the systems that they put in place around the document. So everything that we do is nothing without systems in relation to the way that they flow through in an organisation. And so I just think your role, and if I think that from a legal perspective, then I know, and the truth is that it's every single division of the business, isn't it, that is elevated by brilliant systems or constrained by the lack of them.
100%. One of the metaphors I use, which I think helps to make that really clear, is if you think of the human system and compare that to, let's say, the business system, like if they're both systems. Now, when you think about the human body, what happens if one of your subsystems isn't working very well? The endocrine system, skeletal system, respiratory system, like if one of those systems fails, it brings down the overall health of the whole body. And it's the same in your business. So you've got certain subsystems like marketing and sales and operations and finance. And if some of those subsystems fail, it actually brings the overall health down of the whole business. So systems are the fundamental building blocks of great business, and all problems within business can be traced back to your systems. So you want to get very good at understanding and thinking about your business through that lens, and it actually makes your business much easier to work on. If you don't have enough leads, you've got some lead generation systems you need to put in place. If you're having cash flow issues, you might want to tighten up your financial systems. So it becomes a game that is much easier to win when you think about it that way.
I love that way to think about it. What a brilliant way to think about it. But systems as a whole, you and I could rub it on about it for years, but business owners, I feel like their reaction to talking about systems is, oh my God, that sounds like a lot of work. And where do I even start?
Yeah.
Is that do you feel like that's the common reaction of business owners to the concept of a system?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that happened for me is something changed in my brain where it's not that I love documenting systems and processes. Far from it. I'm not that guy who likes to write out the checklists or have a detailed process. As a business owner, I actually fell in love with the result of what the systems bring. It's not the creation of them. So that's a good first stepping stone for a lot of business owners, is to fall in love with the result. And then it doesn't necessarily have to be you, the business owner, that is doing all of the documentation, and you might have someone in your team who is the right fit for that. And the business owner is quite often not the best person on the team to be documenting process. So you don't have to be that way wired to start building a systems-driven business, but you want to respect and appreciate and value them, and that way you can lead by example for the team, and you can say, we're putting time, energy and money towards making this happen because it's important, and you as the business owner are not above the rules. Like, you also follow the process because you understand what the outcome is that you're working towards.
Follow the process. I feel like that's a really insightful comment as well, because it's not just about creating them, it's also then about following them as well, don't you think? I personally think that's where a lot of systems fall down. Sometimes you can have great systems that are created, but it's the discipline organisationally to follow systems.
Yeah,
is that what?
Definitely. One of the first things that we do is we make sure that you've got the process documented, and then you want to have it stored somewhere so it's very clear who is doing what by when. So at least then there's no confusion and no wiggle room for someone to say, oh yeah, but I didn't know, or oh, that wasn't explained to me, so I didn't understand that was the process. You need to remove those opportunities to wiggle out of why someone didn't follow the process. But then beyond that, yeah, it is a matter of building a systems culture and getting into the habit of following it and holding people accountable and having a transparent organization. And a lot of the challenges business owners have initially stem from existing team members that may have been with you for a long time that haven't been trained on this way of doing things. But once you get this in place and you start adding new team members, and that's all they've ever known is this system and this way, and that's just how we do it here, it actually gets much easier. So there is a bit of resistance and a hurdle that you need to overcome at the start. Just understand that does get easier once you get going, and you just need to build up the evidence and proof for you and your team that you are a systems-driven business. You have a process and a way of doing things. You talk about it on team meetings. You celebrate system wins. Whenever there's a problem, you blame the system first. Like, all of this thinking helps you to get to a point where you have undeniable proof that you are a systems-driven business. But in the early days, you don't have any of that proof. You're just getting started, and the team might think, oh yes, the business owner will forget about this, and next week it'll be just back to business as usual.
And they might, if they don't have a good system for remembering. But on that note, we actually have we have 3 main meetings in the week: Motivation Monday, Wisdom Wednesday, and Reflection Friday, actually, which is our sort of our innovation meeting. But the first question that everyone has to answer is, which system worked really well for you this week? And I love that bit because it's that constant. And do you know what, the team, I think they all thought I was weird when I started this, but I'm all about positive reinforcement of messages. And so everyone talking about this, and we've done it for maybe a year now, so everyone's so used to it. But they're always on the lookout for what are the systems that are working really well, and then share it between themselves. And I love that. Like, it is my favourite meeting of the week, because, and then the next question we ask is, where is the opportunity? What hasn't worked as well as we thought, either because of us or because of something external to us? And is there some sort of system answer to this? And I feel that, like, constantly asking those questions, even people who don't get it, over time, that focus I have seen, like, the team just constantly thinks in terms of system answers now, which is, and then that's when you've won, isn't it? When it's not just you thinking about it, it's the whole company thinking and coming up with and improving systems.
Yeah. It is the holy grail, is when you start to hear the team go, that's just how we do it here. This is how we do things here. And I love the idea of having it in that weekly meeting, because you're just building up a habit and you're training your team to look for the positives and the wins that come from systemization, and then basically saying, and any of that pain you're having, that's because we don't have a system in place. So that is genius. You look for as many of those little things as possible, especially in the early days, and that's what helps to build the evidence and the proof for your team that, okay, yes, systems are important here, and I'm getting used to looking for it and thinking about it. And there's a range of things that you can do. Like, that works really well for existing teams. The other way to think about it also is to embed it into your recruitment and onboarding processes. So when you're recruiting right up front, you're looking for systems-driven, transparent, accountable team members, and that is in your position description, and you're linking to 3 or 4 systems that might be related to their role. So you're projecting right up front, we are a systems-driven organization. These are the types of tasks that you're going to be doing. If you don't like that, don't apply. And you can, similarly with your interviews, you can ask questions about when was the last time that you created a checklist or a process to help you complete one of your tasks. Like, those types of questions you build in, and it means you get the people that resonate with this message right up front. Whereas a lot of business owners, especially when they're changing culture, and all of the resistance and challenge they're having is because they haven't given this a thought when they recruited the first time round. They just looked for the warm body or the first person they could grab to fill that seat because they needed someone. And oftentimes that lack of thought is what's making changing challenging.
Love it. And can you talk about, I love stories. Tell us a story. Have you worked with clients before where you've gone, okay, so they've had issues coming in, you work together with them, and then the outcome has been this sort of amazing organization? Yeah. I want to hear some of those examples of
one that comes to mind. I just love it because of it's the punchline at the end. I'll save the punchline for you, but I remember working with a guy called Gary McMahon, and he runs a business called Ecosystem Solutions, and they're a bushfire management company. And initially it was him and a handful of team members, but he built up that practice as him being the guy because he had all of the training and understood how to analyze and prepare the appropriate proposals and reports, and he very much was the center cog. And he hadn't been on a holiday for 5 years since starting that business because he was just so firmly entrenched. And we went through the process of applying systemology to his business, which has a lot to do with extracting out best practice, getting that documented and organized in a central location, and then thinking about how some of those responsibilities can be passed off to team members. And he ended up going through that process, and long story short, took his first holiday in 5 years. And then when he was telling me the story, he said, and I think systemology saved my marriage. And I thought, wow, that needs to be on the book cover, Systemology Saves Marriages, because he said he was so invested and so focused in on the business, and it was taking all of his energy that he didn't have enough time for the family. And that was a chance for him to realize, hey, I can create a little bit of space here. But there are plenty of stories, everything from business owners scaling operations and adding additional businesses because now they've got a set of core systems that they can roll into the new businesses that they take over. There's a guy down in Tassie, Luke Davies, and he runs a Davies construction company, and they're an award-winning builder down in Tassie. And he went through the process and got himself out of the day-to-day and then rolled out 5 businesses all surrounding his core business that now feed in. There's a materials, and there's an architectural firm, and there's basically all of these feeder businesses that enable clients to move around inside the ecosystem. And then there's other ones like Jeanette Farron from Diggy Doggy Daycare that had a doggy daycare centre, and she was planning to exit, owned it for 13 years, systemized it, ended up selling to Petstock. And the thing that they cited, the 2 reasons they bought it, one was the financial performance, and the second was the systems, because they had a vision for attaching the doggy daycare centres and to their Petstock stores, and they saw Jeanette Systems as like the franchise prototype. So they said, well, we're going to buy that IP, and then they've started rolling out Diggy Doggy daycares as an attachment to Petstock. Different businesses and different business owners get different outcomes. Oftentimes it has a lot to do with what are they looking for, and then that will help to set the course for how systems will get them there.
And where does a business owner start, Dave?
Yes.
This sounds fantastic,
Yes.
but holy hell, how do we just even get started?
The first thing I get business owners to think about is if we can just deliver your core product or service without key person dependency, whether it's you, the business owner, or any other team member, that's really the best place to start, because most business owners don't have a picture in their head of their business working without them in it. So we need to prove to them that this is possible. So we pick a primary product or service, we map the linear journey that client and prospect goes through to receive that product or service, and then we generate the systems around that. And normally it's just the most probable outcome. We don't systemize everything. We just assume that everything's blue skies and rainbows and nothing goes wrong, and it's just this perfect path, and the client chooses blue widgets and they want this option, and because that is the most probable, and we just systemize that. And that is where you start. And then oftentimes inside that picture, there's a pain point, and you'll double down on the pain point. You might go, ooh, I can't get enough leads, or ooh, I know this always falls over because I'm the salesperson, and if I got so many leads, I can't sell them, and that's a problem. Or maybe the pain point is the delivery of the product or service, and you're like, ooh, I know whether consciously or subconsciously that selling more people equals pain, because then I actually have to do the work. And then that can cause business owners to almost self-sabotage. So within that critical client flow, I call it, we ask, where is the pain? And typically that's where you start.
Love it. Love it. Starting at the pain, solving the pain,
Yes.
solving the pain. How often should systems be revisited? And should there be a system for when systems are revisited?
Generally for me, I know there are certain things like ISO 9000 and where they have methodologies around, oh yes, annually, every 12 months, the system's got to be reviewed because that way we can tick this box. I'm more of the opinion that you want to build this culture that as things break, or if they're not quite working, that the first step is let's go to work on the system. So while it can be helpful sometimes to go, let's look at this every 12 months, my preference is to just build that culture of systems thinking and constantly working on it and adapting and looking for improvement.
Love it. I completely agree. I'm with you 100%. And that's like the easier way as well, isn't it? Because I find creating systems in a vortex can be very difficult, but when you're actually on it, when something triggers you, it's almost like you've got it's like a flow state with systems that I think where it works best.
And it's more obvious because you're trying to solve for a particular use case. Sometimes if you're reviewing a system at a later stage and you're not thinking through the lens of that system being applied or used right now, it's much harder to try and solve or improve or optimize. Whereas if you go, oh yes, I'm working with this client, Jenny, she's at this particular company and this is what she's looking for. Okay, great. And this is the system I'm following and it broke here. Then you can go, what's going to be best for Jenny? Okay, I'm going to make the change based on this scenario. And that's infinitely easier to work with.
Love it. Okay. Look, Dave, what a fantastic discussion. I love what you do, and I love your book. Why don't you tell our listeners all about your book and how they can get a copy?
Yeah, best place to head is just over to Amazon. If you're listening to this right now, because you're probably a podcast type person, there is the audio book, so you'll see the link on Amazon over to Audible. It's called Systemology. If you're watching, you'll see it. If you're not, you'll hear the name Systemology. Just, go to Amazon and look for that. The book is just how to go from I don't really have any systems and processes in place to I've got the minimum number of systems required to run your business. And how do you build a bit of a systems culture? It's my system for systemizing a business, and that's a great place to start.
No, I love it. I love it. We'll put links in the show notes. And is there any sort of parting ideas or any other ways that, our listeners should engage with you to find out more about systems?
Yeah. Look, the book is useful and complete. And then if you want to follow the rabbit hole, just go to systemology.com. There's links to additional YouTube videos and extra resources to help you moving. The main thing really is I'm here to inspire business owners to build good, solid systems and processes. I know you can do it, and it has a tremendous impact. So hopefully we've lit that fire in some business owners listening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dave, thank you for fighting the good fight. And I really, truly, honestly hope every single one of our listeners goes and grabs a copy of your book and goes down the system rabbit hole, because I just think every business is so much better for it. And actually, we've got a great episode where we talk about why great systems in a business lead to the likelihood of a far greater exit as well. So if you haven't heard that, check out the show notes and we'll link right through to our episode where Dave and I discuss systems for exit. Dave, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
My pleasure.
Well, that's it for today's deep dive with systems guru Dave Jennings. We covered everything from business ownership, the buying, growing, selling journey, and why it's so applicable to SMEs that are scaling. Our chat takes quite a few twists and turns and hopefully gave you plenty of food for thought. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, be sure to subscribe. Tune in next time for the best practices, tips and tricks. See you next time on Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Talking Law. Tune in next time for more smart legal tips and tricks to keep you clear of those legal landmines. If you want to get a download of today's show notes, head over to talkinglaw.com.au.